Okay, so you have brought us a source today that is, well, it's not just making waves, it's more like it's threatening to dissolve the very ground that modern academia stands on.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
We are talking about research suggesting that, meaning, the absolute core of human thought, philosophy, our organizations is actually subject to the laws of physics.
That's exactly right. For this deep dive, we're focusing on excerpts from Erickson Katz's, let's call it controversial work from 2026, When Meaning Becomes Accountable.
Right.
And it really is this profound collision. It forces you to ask, what happens when you take thermodynamics, the science of energy, heat, stability, and you apply it to these traditionally soft concepts, like ethics, belief systems, even how we evaluate things?
It sounds like taking the most abstract ideas we have and just putting them through a brutal stress test. So our mission today, for you listening, is to really understand Katz's core thesis, which is pretty counterintuitive. And then we're going to walk through the 5 specific structural reasons why institutions are basically categorically rejecting this work.
And it's not just a simple disagreement over method. You have to see it as a kind of systemic allergic reaction to a framework that, well, ends up diagnosing the system itself.
Okay, so let's start there. What is that core proposition that's causing all this trouble?
The central idea, and it's what generates all the heat, is deceptively simple, it says. Meaning is experientially subjective.
Okay, I'm with you so far. My experience of an idea is unique to me.
Exactly. But, and this is the whole game, it is also thermodynamically constrained.
Wait, hang on. How can it be both? If my understanding is subjective, how can it also be constrained by something as rigid as, say, the second law of thermodynamics, the one that says things always move toward disorder?
Because subjectivity doesn't mean it's arbitrary. That's the key. Katz's framework argues that any system designed to carry meaning, whether that's your mind, a language, a company's mission statement, even an AI, is fundamentally an energy system.
An energy system.
And like any energy system, it's governed. So if you keep processing that meaning or you try to apply it in new areas, it starts to accumulate entropy.
And entropy, in this context, that's like a loss of coherence, a kind of drift from what it originally meant.
Precisely, a loss of fidelity.
Right.
And if the system doesn't have active ways to regulate itself and push back against that decay, or worse, if the regulations actually speed up the decay, that meaning will drift, it will degrade, and eventually it can just collapse entirely.
So he's taking these ideas that philosophy and theology have sort of guarded for centuries.
Why? They're a private territory.
And he's making them accountable, like an engineering system that can fail.
That's it. And that sets us up perfectly for the first big source of institutional resistance, what Katz calls the accountability problem.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Well, for centuries, fields like philosophy and theology have operated under this implicit protective shield. The idea is that because meaning is experienced subjectively, it's given what you might call epistemic immunity.
A kind of get-out-of-jail-free card.
Exactly. It's protected from formal analysis, from being proven false. The interpretation is the final word. It's sealed off.
Right. If you critique some ethical system, the answer is always, well, that's just a matter of interpretation, or that's your worldview against mine. The system can't be tested from the outside.
And this thermodynamic framework just rips that insulation right off. It says, sure, subjectivity is real, but that doesn't excuse the system from having measurable properties. A semantic system has to show it has stable conditions. It has to prove it can resist falling apart when you actually use it.
So it's not just about what I believe, it's about whether the system I believe in can hold its own shape under pressure. I can just hear an ethicist pushing back right now, You're trying to reduce profound human experience to an equation.
Of course. That's corrosive. That's the heart of the resistance. But the framework offers really concrete ways to test this. For example, you can take a complex philosophical system or even a legal code, and you can assess if it maintains its semantic integrity when you apply it in different situations.
So does it mean the same thing in case A as it does in case B?
And does it start generating contradictions when you apply its own rules to itself over and over? That's the test.
So if a company's mission statement is truly stable, then applying it to hiring and to budgeting and to product design should all feel coherent.
Yes.
But if using it for hiring contradicts what it means for product design, then it's unstable. It's accumulating entropy.
You're shifting from just interpreting the meaning to actually diagnosing the system's ability to sustain that meaning.
Yeah.
And that makes these previously protected fields accountable in a way that is, well, it's profoundly uncomfortable.
especially for fields where authority comes from interpretive skill, not from building something that, doesn't fall down.
Right, that's a huge shift.
And Katz didn't stop there. After he went after these external systems, he turned that same lens inward, right onto academia itself. Which brings us to the second source of discomfort: evaluation as entropy injection.
This is, for many academics, the most unsettling part of the whole analysis. I mean, institutions naturally see their validation tools, peer review, citation metrics, impact factors, as neutral, as objective.
They're the quality control inspectors.
Exactly. But the thermodynamic framework says they're the absolute opposite. They're not neutral observers. They are active participants that are systematically injecting entropy disorder into the very knowledge they're supposed to be validating.
That's a total inversion. So instead of stabilizing knowledge, our methods for checking it are actually making it less stable.
A complete inversion.
Yeah.
And Katz points to 4 specific ways this happens. Let's start with, the sacred cow, the peer review process itself.
Okay. How does a reviewer trying to improve a paper actually cause decay?
By what he calls compression requirements. You'll often have, say, 2 reviewers who want completely contradictory changes, mutually exclusive revisions. But to get published, you have to satisfy them both, usually within the same word count.
Oh, I've definitely been there. You're forced to cram 2 opposing ideas into one paragraph, and it just turns to mush.
You sacrifice the coherence of your original argument just to get it through the gate. You are literally injecting incoherence into the system for the sake of publication.
Okay, that's one. What's the second mechanism?
The second is that evaluation incentivizes proxy optimization. We stop focusing on creating solid, stable knowledge, and we start focusing on, gaming the metrics, maximizing the proxy.
The impact factor, the citation count.
Right. The goal shifts from trying to find what's true to just trying to get a high score.
Goodhart's law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. What are the other 2?
The third is rewarding novelty over foundational stability. The whole academic structure is built to reward finding one tiny new thing, that marginal new data point. It doesn't really reward the much harder, less glamorous work of consolidating what we already know and making sure it's stable.
Right. Novelty gets you published. Stability gets you maybe a footnote.
And novelty often just fragments the field even more. And the fourth is that very fragmentation.
How so?
Academic publishing is siloed. It's all in these narrow journals. So if you do truly integrative work, the kind of thing that builds deep coherence across fields, you can't publish it. You have to chop it up into what he calls minimum publishable units to fit into those silos.
You lose the forest because you're forced to publish one leaf at a time.
You have to. And in doing so, you destroy the systemic integrity of the idea. This is what he calls the reflexive threat. The discomfort isn't just intellectual. It's being told that the very tool you trust to build knowledge is the one that's systematically breaking it.
It's a crisis of faith in the whole operation. The resistance is an institutional immune response.
It has to be. You're questioning the core logic.
Which is a perfect transition to the boundary issues. Source 3, the interstitial problem. This whole framework is designed to be integrative. It connects philosophy, computation, governance.
And that is precisely why it gets rejected. It's a structural problem. Academic review is optimized for small, incremental steps within a single, established field. If you're a molecular biologist, the journal knows exactly how to judge your work.
But Katz is all over the map. He's talking about meaning degrading in AI models.
Yeah.
And then he's using the same pattern to explain why governments collapse.
He's trespassing. He's crossing every single boundary.
Yeah.
So the philosophy journals see the math and the computation, and they say, this isn't for us. Send this to computer science.
And the computer science journals see the deep philosophical arguments and say,
this is a humanities paper, not our department.
Right. So it's like being rejected from every club because you don't fit the specific dress code for any single one.
That's a great analogy. For Katz, the fact that it integrates is its greatest strength. It shows this is a universal law. But for the institution, that same quality guarantees this rejection because the institution is built on the separation of knowledge, not the integration.
And that leads right into the fourth point of resistance, the neither nor problem. This is about the framework just refusing to fit into the neat little boxes reviewers use to classify ideas.
Yes. In academia, you usually have to pick a team. Are you a positivist or a relativist? An objectivist or a constructivist?
Yeah.
You have to choose because the tools we use to assess work depend on those categories.
And this thermodynamic framework just rejects the choice itself.
It does. It rejects the relativist view by saying that truth is not just a social construct or completely dependent on your worldview, There is an independent reality.
Okay, so it's not relativistic, but then it also rejects the classic positivist idea, which says that with enough science and good methods, we can eventually get to that objective truth perfectly. Right. It denies that. It says our access to that truth will always be constrained by thermodynamics, by entropy. You can't just method your way out of physics. This is its unique posture. Katz calls it anchored truth with constrained access.
Anchored truth, meaning truth is real, it exists out there.
Ontologically independent, yes.
But constrained access means our ability to see it and describe it is always going to be fuzzy, incomplete, and always decaying.
That's a perfect way to put it. Our grasp on the truth is epistemologically limited by physical laws. It admits we're human and flawed without saying that truth is therefore totally arbitrary.
And because it refuses to be one or the other, not purely objectivist, not purely relativist reviewers are just paralyzed.
They're paralyzed. They don't have a rubric for it. They can't slot it into a known category, so they can't assess it. And the easiest thing to do then is just to reject it.
Which brings us to the fifth, and I would argue the most threatening reason for all this resistance.
Yeah.
The incentive problem. This is where it gets really personal for the institution. This is where the self-diagnosis becomes critical. As researchers have been pointing out for years, our performance metrics, the H-index, publication counts, journal ranks, they stop being indicators and they become the target. They become the whole point.
They drive every decision, hiring, tenure, funding, all of it.
And if those targets reward things like fragmentation and speed over depth and coherence, they become what Katz calls thermodynamic collapse accelerants. They just compound all the entropy we were talking about earlier.
So it's a feedback loop.
A dangerous one.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. To maximize your publication count, you have to slice up your big, coherent research program into the smallest possible minimum publishable unit. You're actively incentivized to chase novelty over the hard, stabilizing work of synthesis because new gets you citations faster.
The entire knowledge system starts to run like a hyper-caffeinated startup. It's all about shipping products, shipping papers, but it never builds a stable foundation.
And the cumulative diagnosis from that is, it's chilling. We produce exponentially more outputs, more papers, more data. But the system as a whole has less and less overall coherence. That signature, more output, less stability, is the classic sign of entropy taking over a system.
So the ultimate resistance here is that this framework is diagnosing the institution's most sacred processes, prestige, tenure, grants, as being systematically counterproductive.
You're asking the institution to accept that its own reward structure is actively undermining its stated mission to create stable knowledge.
It's like asking a patient to accept a diagnosis that says their own skeleton is the cause of their disease.
The resistance is deeply, deeply structural. It's not just a debate about the math.
So to wrap this all up for you, the listener, the rejection of this work isn't really about flawed data. It's because this framework, first, makes meaning accountable to physical laws, which strips away its philosophical immunity. Second, it shows that our own evaluation tools, like peer review, are actually entropy generators.
Third, it refuses to stay in its lane, crossing disciplinary boundaries. Fourth, it doesn't fit into the neat philosophical boxes we use to judge ideas. And finally, and maybe most importantly,
it exposes the entire academic reward system as an engine that accelerates the collapse of coherence.
The real challenge is that our academic structures are built for stability. They're optimized for slow, incremental progress inside their silos. They just don't have the agility, or frankly the incentive, to deal with a framework that exposes a fundamental vulnerability that they all share. The resistance isn't malice. It's the structure defending itself.
Which leaves us with the final, really provocative thought from all this research. Can our institutions actually adapt? Can they change their own evaluation and reward systems to handle frameworks that put those very systems under the microscope?
Or will the resistance just continue until the thermodynamic constraints win? Not through careful reform, but through a much more chaotic systemic collapse.
And that's the real challenge facing any system that's trying to produce knowledge. It's definitely something for you to think about as you look at the stability, or maybe the instability, of your own intellectual world.